Now, we won't have notes for the scientific heart illustration, which is this project right here, because it's usually at the end of the quarter and we tend to run out of time. And so what we're going to do for this is we're going to create a, like I said, scientific heart illustration. This should look familiar as you guys learned this in 7th grade science. We used to have the plastic sheets to go over the top. We will not have that, and so you guys will be labeling directly onto the paper, and that's absolutely fine. And we're going to use color pencil for blending, which we've already been practicing throughout the quarter. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to do a practice grid drawing, okay? Because this looks a little bit intimidating when you start off. But what we do for our final is we grid out a reference photo. So we're going to use a grid here. We're going to do it to scale. We're going to grid here on our final paper. And we're going to use this to transfer the drawing. A lot of you guys have done this in 6th grade math, and if you haven't done this, I'm going to go through the process, so don't worry if it looks new to you. So first we're going to start with practice grid, okay, and we're going to do a drawing of a bird and the drawing of the bubbles first. So if you forgot how to use a grid, what we're going to do is actually just practice. So what I'm looking at here is where the bird beak crosses in A2. So to me that looks like it's about halfway down. So I just make a little mark and I make it very, very light, okay? Then I look at where it crosses here. Okay, this is about halfway, it's a little to the left, so I'm just moving a little bit to the left, okay? Now when I look at this one here, this is halfway. That's about a quarter of the way down for the head, okay? And I can start drawing that line in and connecting it, making sure that I follow the curve that I see here. And again, I'm going to do this really lightly because if it doesn't look right, I can always erase it and try again. Okay, if you're someone who likes to draw box by box, for example, if you want to draw this line in here completely before you move on, that's absolutely fine. That's just not the way that I do it. But if you're comfortable doing it that way, you can go ahead and do that. So again, I'm just going to continue checking where this line is going to cross. Okay, I'm going to come down here. And then I would continue until I have my entire bird drawn in this area. Now, when we get down to the bubbles down here, I know people say it's very difficult to draw circles, but we have reference points. So if you decide to go like this and guess where the circle is, and I come in to check it and it's not even in the right grid, if it's over here, then you're gonna have to redo it, okay? So each of these drawings will be checked by the teacher before you get your final paper. So you must have both done. Please don't come up just when you have your bird done. You must have both done, and then you're gonna get your final paper. The final paper is a 6-inch by 8-inch paper. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Okay, this one we're going to create a 1-inch by 1-inch grid. And we want to draw very, very lightly because we don't want people to know that we used a grid when we did our drawing. So I'm going to lay my ruler across. Again, check the ruler. If the 0 mark is on the inside, you have to go past. Okay, so I'm going to make really light lines. Now when we make the grid, please don't just do one line and try to guess where the straight line is. You're going to make the marks down at the bottom as well. Now I make those marks so that way I can connect it and make a straight line. So I'm going to connect my top mark with my bottom mark. And then for those of you who struggle with drawing light lines, hold your pencil with 2 fingers on the back side of it and draw your line. Okay, we're going to be erasing these, so make sure that you draw these very, very lightly. Okay, I'm going to continue this. I'm going to fill in the whole side. And then I need to make it into a grid, so I need to do the same thing on this side. And I'm going to mark every inch. I'm going to do that across, then I'm going to go down here. I'm going to mark every inch, and then I'm going to connect it. So when I'm done, it's going to look something like this. And my lines are kind of light, hopefully you can see it. I have a grid throughout my whole paper now, okay? When you finish the grid on this one, then you're going to grid this heart. This one is going to be a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch because it's smaller. So what we're going to do is mark again every 1/2 inch. And it's the same process we used before. We can color dark. We don't need to erase these lines. So I'm marking every 1/2 inch, then I'm going to connect those lines. Now, I can only print so many color copies before the office gets mad at me, so you only get one heart. So make sure that when you guys are gridding this out, you're doing this correctly. Okay, so I would continue gridding this until I have both ways gridded. Okay, so this is a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch. Okay, this one's going to be 1 inch. You do not need to write that on there. This will just be a reminder for you guys. Okay, once I have both of these gridded out, I can start this process where I'm drawing the smaller image into the larger space, and we've already practiced this. Now, this is a lot more complicated than the bird and the bubbles. So what I do is if I come across an area that looks like it has a lot of detail and I'm not sure where to start, I use another grid. So I'm going to try to zoom in for you guys. Okay, so if I need another reference point, I can put an X in these grids here, and I put an X in this one very, very lightly. Okay, so I can do the same thing here. So anytime it looks like it gets kind of confusing, that just gives you another reference point to work with. Okay, so when I start drawing, say, this area right here, this grid, this square, is going to be this one right here. So I know that this is hitting below the line, and I'm going to come up, and this little tube right here is going to be hitting my X. Okay, and I always draw really lightly because I mess up all the time, and that's fine, as long as I make sure that I fix it eventually. Okay, I know that this one is hitting in between here and it's coming into this space. So again, I'm just going to draw really, really lightly and connect it. It's going to hit down here. And I'm just using the grid again to draw very, very lightly, but to get everything that I need to in this space. I'm going to continue using my grid to fill in the rest of my drawing. Okay, once I finish drawing all of the lines, then I'm ready to start erasing the grid lines and start with colored pencil. So what I need to do is erase any of the grid lines that I don't need. Oops, I think I'm missing one part right here. And you want to erase the grid lines before you do color pencil, because once you put the color over the top, you're not going to be able to see it anymore. Now this can be kind of a daunting task. So what I do is I might only do the grid lines inside of the sections I'm ready to color. Just don't forget to do it, okay, as you're going along. Okay, so I'm just going to erase the grid lines in the areas that I'm going to work in. And I'm just going to do a small section of color pencil so you guys can see what this is going to look like. Again, we've already practiced with our blind contour drawings how to blend two color pencils together, and now we're going to use it to represent a realistic surface. So what I'm looking at right here is the blue. So you don't have to match the blue exactly to what you see. It can be a little bit different, but just make sure that you write down the name of the colored pencil so that way the next day that you come in, at least it's consistent. Okay, if you want to use more of a blue violet, that's okay as long as you're being consistent with your color choice. I already know how to blend dark to medium to light, and when I look here I see that it's darker on this side. I have a light highlight right here, but then again it makes it dark along this side right here. So I can start off pressing a little bit harder with the blue that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to shade from dark to medium to light, leaving a highlight in here. So I'm just barely touching the paper right now. This top part is dark again on the outside. And so I'm just following the picture where it's going to show me where I need to have a light area. If it looks a little bit different than the picture, don't panic. That's okay. Okay. And then I'm going to look at this side right here. It's a little bit darker. And it pulls in to the side here a little bit darker too. So we have a rounded surface. And the highlight is not directly in the middle, it's kind of on the left side. So this side I'm going to make my dark go a little bit farther. Okay, now I lost a little bit of a highlight right here, so I'm going to fill that in a little bit. But I have a highlight up top here, so I want to make sure that I just barely add color to it, so that way I can blend into my highlight. Now don't rely on the white color pencil. Remember, when you lay the white color pencil over the top of another color, it doesn't turn out white. It's just going to smear it a little bit. Now if you do want to use a white color pencil, you need to do that on the white of the paper. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit more depth to this by using a darker blue just to add some shadows on the outside. And then I'm also going to use it right here. Instead of black, I like to use a darker version of the other color, so it looks like it blends a little bit better. Okay, now even this one that I did here is different than my example that I did earlier. Every time I shade, I think I do it a little bit differently. And so if yours doesn't look like mine, that's okay too. All right, so when I'm working with red, the red turns out bright. The harder that I press with the red, it's going to be pretty bright. So what I do is I still want to have a dark to medium to light. And I'm just going to show you one small shaded area. In fact, let's just go up here. So by pressing hard with the red, it's not going to make it look like it's darker. And I don't want to use black. And I don't have a really dark, deep red over there with the colored pencils. So what we do is you can use a brown. So I can create a little bit more of a shadow and dull that red down with the brown. Okay, now the highlight kind of fades as I go up, so I'm going to get rid of it a little bit up here. And same thing here, I can create a little highlight with my shadow on the outside to create depth, and I can use the brown, cover up that top area right here. Okay. Try to make it match this as much as you can, but if it doesn't look exactly like this, that's okay. And again, write down the names of the color pencils that you guys are using and make sure you erase the grid lines before you start with a color pencil. Once you finish coloring everything inside the heart here, then you can erase all the grid lines and then you can use either your pencil or a thin Sharpie to outline and label your heart. So you can add all the labels at the very, very end. Okay. Make sure you put your first, last name, class period on the back of it, and you're all done.